And good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our webinar and call this evening. This evening, we're going to be talking about Mythbusters because on January 12th, President Obama is going to definitely be mentioning the TPP in his State of the Union address, and he's going to be working very, very hard to sell this trade deal to an unsuspecting public. And we are going to be talking tonight about countering a false narrative. Our guests tonight are Emilianne, Slaydon, TPP Media March, Adam Weissman, TradeJustice, Global Justice for Animals and the Environment, Michael Stumo, Coalition for a Prosperous America, Arthur Stamoulis, Citizens Trade Campaign, Dr. Margaret Flowers. Oh, Margaret, I'm sorry, I managed to miss putting in flush the TPP and popular resistance. I got it on all your other slides. And Diana Ramirez of Public Citizen. I'm Andrea Miller. I'm the Executive Director of People Demanding Action. Our call norms for people who've been on these webinars before, you know that we use the phone for audio so that we can have as low bandwidth as possible in the webinar room. Do not turn on your video camera. We also don't use the video cameras for the same reason. Some of our people have very slow internet connections, and we want to make this available to as many people as we can. This call is being recorded, and a link will be available about 10 minutes after the call where you'll be able to listen to the call. Right now, we are in Q&A mode to eliminate background noise. Now, there are going to be several opportunities for Q&As with our guest, and we will ask you to press *6, and that will put you in the queue so that you'll be able to ask a question. I see a lot of you in the chat room, and what we ask in the chat room is that you keep your discussions on topic. Technical stuff, the call-in number 605-562-3140 with an access code for our non-speakers, 951146. There's a chat function which we see, and at the bottom right there is a share button directly below the listing of all of the folks in the meeting room. You can click on the share button, and that will be another place where you can download this PowerPoint as well as previous PowerPoints. After the call, you will be able to go and download all the information. I'm going to paste the link in right now from this link. I want to give you a very quick update on the advocacy alert that we launched last week. We launched the alert on, I believe, Tuesday, or it might have been Wednesday. It is an alert where we are emailing both senators and our House member. We can also post on their Twitter page as well as their Facebook page. As of this afternoon, 13,747 emails were sent to Congress opposing the TPP. Now, we didn't do quite as well with our letter to the editor. We've had 18 letters to the editor written so far, but we can keep on working on that. There is a very large team of people who put these calls together. Tom Hocking is our technical advisor. He runs our Facebook group. Tom can answer pre- and post-call technical questions. He's with Move On in Pennsylvania. And you can go to our Facebook page and download the PowerPoint and get a link to the call recording at facebook.com groups global TPP team. Harriet Haywood is another member of our call planning team. She's the call co-organizer. She is also the Florida state leader for People Demanding Action. Mara Cohen is on our team. Mara works with me on the en masse criminalization team. She is also a global climate convergence leader in her home state of Illinois. Lisa Oldendorf also joins us. She's with Move On in New York. She is our chat host tonight and also a member of our call planning team. Linda Brewster is on the line as well. She's a member of the call planning team. Periodically, she will share event information. She's a Move On organizer from Washington State. One of our labor partners, Celeste Drake from AFL-CIO, is another member of our call planning team. She's the Trade and Globalization Policy Specialist at the AFL-CIO. And another member of our call planning team is Emilianne Slaydon. We know Emilianne, or most people know Emilianne, because she is the director of social media at TPP Media March. And there is going to be a Twitter storm on Tuesday. It's at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And there are going to be TPP and some T-tip tweets. And those tweets are going to be available at tiny.cc/TPP Media March. Emilianne, are you with us?
I am. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and tell everyone about our storm on Tuesday.
All right. Well, there you go.
Thank you so much. So I don't know if anyone has heard, but you Google Facebook and censorship, you will find out that Facebook is increasingly censoring political views and activist posts. So activists in the know have taken our fight to Twitter. So please join us on every Tuesday, TPP Tuesday. We have a Twitter storm, and that just means that we all gather together and tweet out TPP, stop TPP links to educate new people. This is our invite for this Tuesday coming up, and I'll show you how to participate in the storm and how to share the invite. Next slide, please. So this is, if you go to Twitter, TPP Media March, you'll see the page where you'll see the storm tweets. And it seriously is the most fun and collaborative and easiest way to raise awareness to stop the TPP. Next slide, please. So if you click this link that Andrea had just mentioned, tiny.cc/TPP Media March, you'll go to our homepage on the TD America website. And that's where you can click and drag this storm invite over to your desktop to share on Facebook or tweet it out on Twitter. And then on Tuesday afternoon, the tweets will appear for that night's storm. And you can just highlight, as you can see here, one of the tweets is highlighted. And then next slide, please. You just highlight that tweet, copy it, and then paste it directly into your tweet box on Twitter and press tweet. Everyone with a Twitter account can participate. Just go to Twitter, make an account, put a picture in your profile, make a sentence or two in your bio, and you're all ready to go. You can join us on Tuesday. And you just repeat copying the next tweet and tweet it out all through the storm. Next slide, please. If you don't like to copy and paste, no problem. Here's a super easy way to participate in our storm. This is what the TPP Media March Twitter page looks like, the profile. You just go there, follow TPP Media March. Next slide, please. And then you can just retweet all of the storm tweets or any storm tweets that you would like to retweet. And this Tuesday, we have Lori Wallach will be live tweeting during the State of the Union for TPP Mythbusters. And I will have all of Lori's commentary included here. So you can just go to TPP Media March and retweet all of Lori's comments and all of the storm tweets. And that is a great way to raise awareness with new people who can then find our tweets and click links and learn more and join us on our calls on Sunday, and we will build our movement. So next slide, please. Thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing you on Tuesday. Storm with us to stop the TPP.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so very much, Emilianne. And I've been participating in those Twitter storms. They are very, very easy. And even if you're new to Twitter and you really don't have even any followers, join the storm anyway, because it adds to the popularity of our storm, and you never know when people might discover you based on what you're tweeting and begin to follow you. A great way to get followers is to be active on Twitter. The next person I'm going to bring up is Adam Weissman. Adam is with TradeJustice in New York. He's also with Global Justice for Animals and the Environment. Adam is on our call planning team. He's one of the folks that work on speaker recruitment. As a matter of fact, every member of our planning team works on speaker recruitment. Adam normally specializes every week in making sure we know about some of the events that have happened regarding the TPP and also any really critical news. So, Adam, I didn't check first. Are you out there? Adam, are you on the line? I may have to go back and get Adam a little bit later. Adam, unmute yourself. There you are. Yes, there you are, Adam. Great.
Okay. Hi. I'm not sure why it was muted, but yep, I am here. Okay, great. So let's get started. So for a lot of big news stories this week, and so for now I'm going to tell people the news, and then later on we'll talk about some of the upcoming events. To get things started, huge news week, and we'll be hearing about some of these news stories in greater depth later on from Arthur. Maybe the biggest news story in the week, although it's a tough call, I'm sure almost everyone probably has heard this, TransCanada, the company behind the Keystone XL pipeline, brought a NAFTA suit against the U.S. concerning President Obama's rejection of the Keystone XL pipeline. By the way, all the stories and events that I'm going to be telling you about tonight are not in slides, but you can find them very easily by going to tradejustice.net/news and then clicking the news link for this date. Every event, every quote, every news story will be listed there. So moving on to some of the major TPP news stories for this week. Some of the biggest stories: the U.S. Business Roundtable and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce both finally came out and endorsed TPP, presumably in anticipation of the State of the Union address. It is now solidly confirmed that TPP will be signed as expected in New Zealand on February 4th. Debate is picking up in Malaysia about TPP. There are concerns that a bauxite mining moratorium could be challenged. There's parliamentary debate that's been scheduled. There's legal analysis that Malaysia may be the only country that is able to opt out of TPP post-signing. Senator Sherrod Brown, who many of us know as one of the strongest and most vocal critics of rotten free trade deals like TPP and NAFTA, is warning that TPP could hurt the auto industry. So moving on to some TTIP stories. There's an article in Forbes this week about how, it's a little bit earlier, that TTIP may be the Waterloo for U.S. farmers. And that report is confirmed by a report in TechDirt that says that at best TPP may according to USDA's own analysis, may provide small gains for the U.S. and losses for Europe. So it's slight win, big lose, all-around agreement as far as farmers are concerned. Turkey may be looking to join TTIP. There's also a new piece from War on Want about the Fight Back campaign against TTIP, and an interesting piece from New Europe about how TTIP and ISDS is looking to reshape global policy towards the corporate agenda. Some concerns rising about TTIP in Ireland. Now moving on to some WTO stories. Our call next week is going to be our first ever completely WTO-focused call, and it's a good time for it because a lot is happening around the WTO. Iran is looking to join the WTO. The U.S. and other WTO nations are seeking new rules that can be used to reduce overfishing. There are ratifications for the WTO's Trade Facilitation Pact. India is pushing for liberalization of services at the WTO, running parallel to the services liberalization push that is going through, of course, TISA, the Trade and Services Agreement. We'll be hearing next week about a report from the last WTO negotiating round, and one of the major WTO developments is a commitment of WTO member nations to eliminate export subsidies on agricultural commodities. And one other very important story that came out this week, or just recently, there's a major new article in Foreign Policy magazine, certainly not always a source that is the most friendly to a critique of neoliberal trade policy, but there's actually a great piece called "Africa was never going to get far without manufacturing, and it can't do so under today's trade and investment rules." Definitely recommend that people check out that piece. There's a great critique of the kind of trade and investment agreements that we're fighting, and overall why neoliberal policy doesn't work, and the double standard behind the neoliberal push in the global south by global north nations that grew their economies by policies that went completely against the neoliberal agenda. So definitely worth checking out. So that is some of the news for this week, and I'll be back with you later in the call to talk about some of the events coming up. Thanks, everyone.
All right, great, Adam. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up the line so that if anybody has any questions for Adam or Emilianne, press *6, and that will put you in the queue. All right, we've got a question from area code 808. Go ahead, your line's open. Caller at 808.
Hi, this is Paul, and I'm from LA. I've heard the news. However, most of this news is from the oligarchs. They control the media. I suggest people also go to the Internet to find out what's really going on. There is a third world war going on, if you're not aware of that, for our economy. The one is the Bundys being up in Burns, Oregon with the Hammonds. They've taken over a Federal Reserve building there. Not a Federal Reserve building, but a Federal Wildlife Reserve building, excuse me. There's a standoff there that may turn into another Waco or a Ruby Ridge incident. The other message that I want to deliver is that if you're not aware of this, on October the 15th of 2015, a commercial lien for $279 trillion was filed against the American Bar Association, the International Bar Association, the Vatican, London, the City of London banksters, and Washington, D.C., as well as all of the U.S. incorporated governments. That means your community government, your state government, your county government. This lien is payable to the American people, and all the people under the occupied territories of the United States. So we know who governs this country. It's certainly not the Obama administration. It's certainly not Congress. It's certainly not the Senate. It is the oligarchs of the world. And you can begin by just looking at the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers amongst those who have the power. So the economy is going to hell. We all know that. And the Chinese are holding a mortgage on the Pacific Northwest. This is why the fight is going on up there in Oregon, because that land, beneath it, there are minerals that everyone wants their hands on to improve their own economies. And because they have the mortgage, which the oligarchs refuse to pay off their debt to China, they want to come in and occupy that land. That's why they want to remove all the small arms from all of us. So we can't fight back. But we have patriots there. The Bundy family went up there. Plus a
Thank you.
Yes,
this is really
yes,
for
I understand.
Question.
I understand
this is really
where you're coming from.
Question.
Yes, I understand that. But you need to listen, because if you don't, you know what's going to happen with this TPP. It's going to be a one world order organization run by the oligarchs, totally and completely out of the UN. And the President of the United States, Mr. Obama, who is a usurper, will be in charge as the UN Secretary. Aloha.
You. We're looking for questions. So if you have a question for Emilianne or Adam, our next person, you're calling in. I don't have a phone number. You're showing up as anonymous, but your line is open.
Hi there. Stephen Costes of New York City.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Stephen.
I have this question. Since it's scheduled to be signed in New Zealand, anybody ever brought up the idea of staging a protest at the New Zealand consulate and consulates in the cities of this country, such as New York and Los Angeles, et al.?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. There was some during the TPP protests in November in Washington, D.C., there were some consulate protests in some of the different TPP governments. I think for the 4th, because people are focusing on decentralized actions, there is going to be more of an emphasis on putting pressure on our local elected officials, our federal elected officials locally, who we have direct influence on more so than the government of New Zealand. Having said that, New Zealand has one of the most active anti-TPP movements, and we actually on one of our calls here had some of the activists in New Zealand come and give a report on their day of action. So I think we can be confident that our allies in New Zealand will mobilize strongly against that signing, and we can show one of the ways that we can show our support for them is by working locally to let our elected officials know that they will be that we demand that they oppose TPP and that they will be held accountable if they don't. But we can certainly communicate with the activists in New Zealand and talk about how we can coordinate our strategies, because it is important to show that we do have international solidarity. And I think when Margaret speaks, she'll probably elaborate on that point. So you should definitely listen to Margaret's report.
Okay, great. Thanks for the question, and Adam, thanks for the answer. Our next caller, I believe you are at 859. I just opened up your line.
Is that me?
Yep, that's you.
Okay, I should be coming in under 954. This happened previously, too. I don't know what's going on, but okay. This is a request for expert knowledge, which I don't possess. Again, I just want to know how far the ISDS provision can be pushed, in particular when it comes to existing energy, clean energy infrastructure can it actually be dismantled with the proper suit? Just how far can ISDS be carried?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I can. Emilianne, do you want to answer the last question? Do you want to speak to that, or should I go ahead? How do you go ahead? Are you there, Emilianne?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. No, please, Adam, feel free to go ahead.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I don't think our concern is so much regarding dismantling of existing infrastructure. That if anything, there are corporations that would very much who are invested in that infrastructure, who would like to see that infrastructure continue. It's more I think it's more our ability to challenge the bad infrastructure that is a real concern, less so than attacks on the good infrastructure. I will say there is an exception to that, which is government procurement. There's a WTO case right now around India's support for its own domestic solar industry. But so that there is that area. But for the most part, I think the cases that we're really looking at are about the ability of corporations to protect environmental challenges to bad energy infrastructure. For example, there's a case under a trade agreement in Germany where an energy-related trade agreement where the Swedish company is suing Germany for working to phase out the nuclear industry. That was something that was in the cards in Germany for a while, and then Fukushima really gave that a shot in the arm to push forward. And so now Germany is facing a €1 billion suit for trying to shut down the nuclear industry. And so that's something that we should be very concerned about as a potential threat from both TPP and TTIP. And we've already seen one area that we've already seen where energy infrastructure is already being attacked by these trade agreements is even before they go into effect. People may have heard that very quietly as part of the much larger legislative package in December, the ban on U.S. crude oil exports, which has been in place for 40 years, was phased out. Well, that was actually something that was demanded and in a series of secret memos that were leaked by the European side in TTIP. So we absolutely have to be concerned about opening the doors for the creation of more bad infrastructure, plus new legal defenses for existing bad infrastructure. So I don't know if that completely answers your question, but maybe maybe Arthur can also pick up and elaborate on that when he speaks.
All right, great. I'm going to take one more question because we've got a number of speakers that are still to come on. Caller, I believe you're at area code 580. Your line's open.
Yeah, my question is for Adam. Did you say Africa will be excluded from manufacturing under the TPP?
No. Okay, let me clarify. What I was saying is that Africa is not part of TPP. What I was saying is that there's an article that talks about how the current trade and investment agreements that are going to make it, and the trade and investment agreements that are being pushed will make it more difficult for Africa to develop a manufacturing economy. One thing that we should be aware of is, in addition to, the trade agreements that we are currently focusing on, TPP and TTIP and TISA, are not the only trade and investment agreements. There are, in fact, many other agreements, and there are also even just many separate investment agreements that are not part of trade agreements, but that contain the same kind of ISDS rules that we have expressed concerns about under TPP. For example, many of you have probably heard about the case where Chevron is suing Ecuador for demanding compensation for indigenous lands that they poisoned, and Chevron then took that case to an investor tribunal. Well, that was not under a free trade agreement like NAFTA or CAFTA. That was under the U.S.-Ecuador bilateral investment treaty. It's kind of like the investment chapter of a free trade agreement without the trade agreement. So there are many of these agreements, and they're very detrimental to any genuine, despite the fact that that trade liberalization and these kind of investment rules are pushed as something that's supposed to support development in the global south, these agreements and the neoliberal agenda that they're part of have really done just the opposite, and they've actually contributed to the underdevelopment of the global south, and really just to the enrichment of first world corporations and the global elites. And so that's really what that article talks about. And if you go if you go to TradeJustice.net/news and go to the January 10th news stories, it is the very last story listed, so you can find it there, and you'll read that story. It's definitely an article well worth reading.
All right, what I'm going to do now is I am going to clear the queue because I do want to bring up our next speakers. So if you had a question, jot it down because there's going to be at least one, if not two more Q&A sessions. So I'm going to. All right, and then I am going to bring up our next speaker. Arthur, are you on the line?
I am.
Wonderful. Arthur is the executive director of Citizens Trade Campaign. They're a national coalition of labor, environmental, family farm, consumer, and human rights organizations working together to create just and sustainable trade policies and a just and sustainable global economy. We have Citizens Trade Campaign to thank for some of the leaked chapters that we got of the TPP text. So, Arthur, I'm going to have you just go ahead and jump right into your presentation.
Yeah, hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you to the call host for organizing this, and thanks to everyone for being on. I'm going to start by saying a few words about TPP timing. And this may be repetitive for some of you, but I think it really bears repeating. And that's that our job for 2016 is ensuring that there isn't a vote on the floor of Congress over the TPP. You know, I get asked, I don't know how many times a day, when do you expect the TPP vote is going to happen? And, I got to tell folks, if we're doing our jobs right, a TPP vote will never happen. And the way that we ensure that is by making sure that votes aren't there to pass the TPP in the House of Representatives. If President Obama isn't confident that he has the votes to pass the TPP, he isn't going to risk sending implementing legislation to Congress and seeing fast track being stripped for the pact, let alone the entire agreement being voted down. He's probably only going to send it to Congress for a vote if he thinks that he has the votes he needs to win. Because I think, as most people on this call know, unlike any other bill, under fast track, there needs to be a vote on the implementing legislation once submitted. They can't just hold it forever. So the danger period for us is in that time after the TPP is signed up until about Memorial Day. If the implementing legislation isn't submitted by Memorial Day, number one, we can pat ourselves on the backs for another amazing job done, and then we could start worrying about how to make sure it doesn't come up during the lame duck session after the election, which I'm personally very confident that we can do. But for now, our job is getting through the spring. And lest anyone get complacent and think, we've already won that battle. Senator McConnell is saying there isn't going to be a vote before the election. We're good. I point to three things that happened this week that Adam alluded to. First, the National Association of Manufacturers came out for the TPP. Then the Business Roundtable came out for the TPP. Then the U.S. Chamber of Commerce came out for the TPP. Those are groups that had been pushing the administration for side agreements and for renegotiation on parts of the TPP, and they've been holding their endorsements, ever since the text was released in November. They were, trying to pressure the administration to get those side deals. Well, they haven't gotten what they wanted, and they've come out for the TPP anyhow. And why is that? It's because they know that it's really now or never. In fact, the head of the Business Roundtable which is the group with, all the corporate world's biggest CEOs, he explicitly said last week that waiting until lame duck is too dangerous, that they want Congress to pass the TPP this spring. So, we should have every expectation that the TPP will be signed next month. As you'll recall, the earliest it can be signed under fast-track rules is anytime after February 3rd. Expect it to be signed shortly thereafter. And then win or lose, we win or lose based on the work we've done, locking down the members who voted against fast-track earlier, last year, and then at minimum, at least keeping some of those who voted for fast-track undecided on the TPP so that the other side can't count on their votes either. And ideally, obviously, flipping as many of those votes as we can. Just quickly in terms of the signing, as Adam said, trade ministers have booked their tickets and had agreed to do the signing in New Zealand on February 4th. The TPP legal scrub is completed, so there's no reason that they can't sign it that soon. The day after the first day they can legally do it, that's the plan for them to do it. The last I heard this past week, and maybe there's been an update since, the New Zealand government was being a little squirrely about it, saying, well, there's no definite plan to sign it then. I read that as meaning one of two things. Either the New Zealand government was trying to prevent protest by denying the signing is taking place there for as long as they could get away with, or perhaps there's some talk of doing a signing with heads of state in another location. We don't know for sure yet exactly how that's going to go down, but the bottom line is that you can be confident the signing is going to take place next month, and we need to make sure that members of Congress are opposed when that happens. So that's the quick update on timing. I also want to take a minute to thank everyone on the call who worked on the organizational sign-on letter opposing the TPP. We had 1,525 groups on that, representing a really broad range of progressive organizations, including many, many of your own. Getting all those signers was, of course, a big undertaking, but that was really only half the work. The next part of it is using the finished letter. So I encourage, first off, each of you to please tweet about it, share it over Facebook, so forth and so on. You can find the letter on top of our website, citizenstrade.org. If you prefer, you can retweet some of our posts from @CitizensTrade. But more important than that, we're doing hand delivery of the letter to district offices throughout the country over the upcoming congressional recess, which starts this Thursday and goes for 10 days through January 24th. In-district meetings and drop-ins are a great way to respond to whatever the president is going to say about the TPP during the State of the Union on Tuesday, and to really get ahead of the anticipated signing next month. So I hope folks can participate in that. If you're interested in connecting with the delegation, going in to do that in your area, or perhaps volunteering to do it in the district that isn't already covered, I encourage folks to please email Elizabeth at citizenstrade.org. Elizabeth will connect you with others in your area. Again, that's Elizabeth at citizenstrade.org. And, even if you can't get involved in hand delivery, if your group signed on, you can at least email it to your area Congress members with a note highlighting that your group is one of the many asking them to publicly oppose the TPP. The important thing is that members of Congress are hearing from people at home in district this month. As I said before, now is the make or break it time on the TPP, and so we need to be gearing up very quickly once again. So that's the brief update on the letter. The last thing I was asked to talk about was myths regarding ISDS, or Investor State Dispute Settlement. I think most people know that's the process found in the TPP and other trade agreements whereby transnational corporations can challenge countries' laws, regulations, even court decisions as a so-called barrier to trade or investment, and demand taxpayer compensation in international tribunals that circumvent domestic judicial systems. The most common myth you'll hear USTR, congressional offices, even some reporters touting about ISDS is that, look, this is no big deal because the United States has never lost an ISDS case. There are a couple really important responses to that. The first is that, with a couple of exceptions, U.S. free trade agreements and bilateral investment treaties that contain ISDS have been with developing countries. Those countries don't have major transnationals with operations in the U.S., and as such, existing pacts are being much more used to attack the laws of developing countries rather than, say, having, Costa Rican companies or Dominican companies, attacking our laws here in the U.S. And so as a result of that, under these existing FTAs and BITs with ISDS, you've got companies attacking clean air rules in Peru, mining laws in El Salvador, fracking moratorium in Canada, the court decision against the oil giant Chevron in Ecuador, a whole host of other examples like that. But if the ISDS system is, spread throughout the Pacific Rim to bigger countries like Australia and Japan, and down the road through the TPP's docking mechanism, potentially even to countries like China, you would expect a lot more cases against the United States because those are countries that do have major transnational corporations with the money and the wherewithal to initiate expensive ISDS cases. It's also worth pointing out that under similar trade dispute provisions, under the World Trade Organization, which allow foreign governments rather than individual corporations to initiate suits, the United States has already lost cases pertaining to the Clean Air Act, the Endangered Species Act, the Marine Mammal Protection Act, Internet gambling rules, tobacco controls, and a whole lot more. And just this month, the U.S. Congress voted to repeal country of origin labels for beef products after the WTO ruled against us and threatened to impose $1 billion a year in penalties. And that, incidentally, is another thing you'll hear our opponents say, that trade agreements can't force us to change our laws. That's true, but what they can do is impose millions and often even billions of dollars in penalties so that if we don't want to face additional suits, we need to change the laws ourselves. At any rate, we're by no means invulnerable to attack under trade agreements, which is what President Obama suggested in his major TPP speech at Nike last year, that we're all a bunch of wackos for suggesting that trade agreements can be used to attack U.S. laws. So that's the first response. The second response to this idea that ISDS is no big deal is, well, what's it even there for then? Even when we win cases, taxpayers are often spending millions of dollars defending against them. The chilling effect of trying to shape policies so you don't have to defend against trade disputes is certainly a very real thing. I've run across it with policymakers at the city, state, and federal level. Studies have shown that ISDS doesn't lead to increased investment in the country. There's no upside for us there. The thing that ISDS proponents will tell you, when you ask, well, why do we even have this, is that, supposedly we need to protect U.S. investments in other countries with potentially corrupt legal systems. Now, putting aside the quasi-nationalist, quasi-racist implications of that argument, there's the fact that there are alternatives to ISDS for companies that are worried about investing abroad. First, they can buy private insurance to protect themselves. Second, if they're big enough, they can negotiate arbitration agreements with foreign governments before investing. Third, if there's really some egregious expropriation, they can always ask the U.S. to initiate a state-to-state dispute under an existing trade deal. And fourth, my personal favorite, is that they can always just invest in the United States instead of investing, in what they say is a corrupt regime. And that's the point that's often forgotten by our policymakers. ISDS is an incentive for U.S. companies to offshore. That's literally what it's all about, making it safer for companies to create jobs overseas rather than here at home, in addition, of course, to making it easier for them to cut the legs out from under social movements. And to that last point, let me just wrap up really quickly by pointing to one instance of an ISDS case that has been brought against the U.S. under an existing trade agreement. and that's one that Adam just mentioned briefly, the announcement last week that TransCanada is seeking $15 billion in damages against the United States under NAFTA for the Obama administration's rejection of the Keystone XL pipeline. The company's legal argument is that the permit rejection was, quote, arbitrary, specifically because environmental activists in the U.S. asserted that the pipeline would have dire environmental consequences, and their activism swayed policymakers. That's TransCanada's case. This is a case with huge environmental implications, and it points to our future where the TPP, as well as TTIP, the transatlantic agreement after the TPP, where they should dramatically expand the ISDS system throughout the world. The future under TPP and TTIP is one where social movements can literally spend years organizing, doing everything right, fighting against extremely difficult odds, then winning, only to have the rug pulled out from underneath them through an ISDS case. ISDS is a major reason why so many environmental groups oppose the TPP. The Keystone is an example that all of us should be spreading the word about. And I'm sure in the coming weeks, our environmental partners will be on this call to tell us how we can further campaign around this case in particular. So I think I've gone over my time. Let me just thank you all again, and I'll stop there.
Thank you very, very much, Arthur. Adam has a question. Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Arthur. My question relates to the State of the Union address. I was wondering if you could tell us what are the key steps for activists to take in the 2 days we have leading up to the Tuesday night State of the Union, and what are the key steps for us to take immediately after the State of the Union, and also what are some of the propaganda points that we can expect President Obama to be pushing at the State of the Union? I think you just gave us some great answers with regard to investor state, but in terms of the propaganda points that they're going to be trying to selling, what can we anticipate will be their key talking points, and what will be our most effective responses to them?
Yeah, those are great questions. Thanks, Adam. So first off, and what people can be doing, over the next couple of days and then after the State of the Union. First off, as others suggested, get ready for the Twitter storms during the State of the Union. As one of the questioners mentioned, we can't be counting on the corporate media to be telling people anything, in terms of the truth around the TPP and other corporate trade deals. It's up to us to do it ourselves, and social media is a great tool to be doing that. Even more important than that is that shortly after the State of the Union, which is Tuesday, on Thursday, members of Congress are back home in district. They're there for 10 days from the 14th through the 24th. This is a particularly important time, right after the State of the Union, right before the TPP is signed, that they're all hearing from each and every one of us when they're at home in district about how much their constituents oppose the TPP. When they're in Washington, D.C., they're hearing from corporate lobbyists day in and day out, and particularly now that the Business Roundtable and the Chamber and NAM and others have come out for it, that lobbying is only going to ramp up in D.C. When they're at home, they need to be hearing from us, and one of the big things we're asking people to do this recess is to deliver that organizational sign-on letter that so many of your groups are on in district. And again, people can email Elizabeth at citizenstrade.org to connect with delegations, in their districts to go deliver that, or to volunteer to lead one if it's a district we don't have covered yet. And that's something we really appreciate. Obviously, always keep an eye out for any town halls, fundraisers, other public appearances that your members of Congress may be doing when they're back home this month. And go out and corner them and, really give them an earful, particularly if they're not already out publicly against the TPP. If they are, be thanking them because they're under a lot of pressure to do the wrong thing, and we need to be backing them up. In terms of, talking points to expect the president to hit on, the first and foremost, the big one is always exports. They always talk about exports. They never talk about imports. They never talk about balance of trade. I think we all know, under 20 plus years of this free trade regime, we've seen our trade deficit, increase nearly sixfold here in the United States, with dire consequences for jobs and wages. And that's, I think, what we need to be hitting home the most on in most districts, the impact this is going to have on jobs and wages. The president will likely, probably talk about the 18,000 tariff cuts that the TPP makes, while failing to mention that a huge percentage of those tariff cuts are for products that we don't export in the U.S. So, everything from like whale meat to ivory, a significant proportion of those are things we don't make here. And so, that number, while it sounds great, is really relatively meaningless. And the U.S. government's one official study on the TPP thus far shows that it will have, zero effect on U.S. economic growth. So there's that as well. The other big thing that the White House often falls back on when the economic arguments aren't there is, the specter of China. And this is, they'll often say, well, who do you want to write the rules for the global economy, us or China? First of all, as we all know, we didn't write the rules of the TPP. Hundreds of corporate advisors wrote the rules for the TPP. The American public didn't write them. These aren't rules that reflect our values. And I think that's the key point to be hammering home. But beyond that, when the TPP, China's rise as an economic powerhouse can't be denied. But the concept that the TPP would somehow inhibit that, it's just ludicrous. The United States, the Obama administration has repeatedly, extended the invitation for China to join the TPP. A huge number of TPP countries already have special trading relationships with China. That's not going to end. This is not going to be a bulwark against Chinese expansion in any way, shape, or form. So those are some of the bigger points.
All right. Thank you very much, Arthur. I want to bring up our next very, very special guest. Our next guest is Mr. Michael Stumo. He's the Chief Executive Officer of the Coalition for a Prosperous America. And this is a coalition of agriculture, manufacturing, and organized labor associations, companies, and even individuals. CPA works for policies to balance U.S. trade, maintain U.S. sovereignty, and develop an effective national production and economic strategy. Michael has a law degree, and he is a member of the bar in Massachusetts, Nebraska, and also in Connecticut. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thanks. Our organization, just for those of you who don't know us, we have quite an ideological diversity. We have a lot of people on the left, a lot of people in the middle, and quite a few on the right. Because the left of center groups are doing such a good job with the Democrats, we always want to do better. We've been focusing mostly on the GOP side throughout Fast Track and now, and we think we had a part in getting 54 GOP representatives to vote against Fast Track, and we of course need that to get up to like 80. But so we are left to right, but because our value add, we primarily have been focusing on the GOP side for the reasons of we need to up the votes on our way on that side in order to win. So this is a slide. Well, basically, I guess I'm here to talk about what are the talking points from the right of center for the president. And I know we had an earlier caller talk about one world order and Obama in charge. That's not necessarily what we say, but certainly that's something that's effective among the Tea Party right, with fast track and the like, and this one world order and the creeping one world order. On the economic side, I guess this slide is about our testimony. I guess you can see what it says, but I'm not going to really repeat this part of it. But in support of the one world order piece, there's something new with the TPP, relatively new, which is called the TPP Commission. And that's in Article, I believe it's 27, or Chapter 27 of the TPP. And that's a commission among the parties that can interpret the agreement in the future. And so from the right, having a global governance structure among the TPP countries called the TPP Commission, where it can interpret the agreement in the future, that's problematic from a conservative's perspective, that Congress doesn't know what it's voting on, and the thing can morph in the future. And further, there's a regulatory coherence chapter in the agreement which provides direct access for foreign governments into our domestic regulatory process. Of course, that's problematic both on the left and the right, but from the right of center perspective, foreign interests have no business in our regulatory process. And Congress then doesn't know what it's voting on. How can it vote on something that's going to morph in the future in this living agreement sense? So again, these are principles that are common to the left and right on sovereignty, but they are touchstones. And for the right, they're pretty powerful. There's this one world order, global governance concept, and the TPP Commission and regulatory coherence are explicitly in the agreement. The next slide, please. So the president will be, I'm repeating what most of you already know, but the president will be talking, I suspect, about growth and export-supported jobs and the like. We do have a flyer. There's a flyer on this slide. If you want the full flyer, you can go to our website homepage, prosperousamerica.org. We have sort of some sliding pictures on there. It's the second sliding picture, which has this. What it says is the most optimistic growth projection among the pro-TPP think tanks for the next 10 years is from the TPP is 0.4%. The best they can come up with, and that's if all tariffs are cut to zero immediately. That's the basis for it. So that's their most optimistic growth projection, which means that 99.6% of growth in the next 10 years will happen anyway. As to the agricultural trade, the USDA last year, so we're using the opponents' admissions against them. So the administration can't claim big growth because there's no one who projects it. People may say it, but there's nobody who projects it. The USDA itself last year, it's 2 years ago now, October 2014, 15 months, whatever it is, found that any increases in overall agricultural trade will not increase U.S. GDP or the U.S. economic size. So even in the agricultural trade, there will be no increase. Additionally, that flyer, if you has citations for what we already know, which is there is no job creation. Of course, we think that jobs are destroyed, and that's what happens because of the net trade deficit. However, the Peterson Institute, one of the most pro-TPP think tanks, admits that it cannot find any correlation between trade agreements and job creation. So anyone who claims it is is way outside anybody's, even the pro-TPP think tanks. There's no basis for claiming it. So it won't create growth. It won't create jobs. Of course, we think that it is it's a drag on growth, and it destroys jobs. Next slide, please. I guess that was the only slides. Arthur made good points on the tariff cuts, the 18,000 tariff cuts that, half of them are for goods we don't trade anyway. Of course, Public Citizen, you may have seen, did a really great long set of bullet points on all kinds of TPP claims that are likely to or could be asserted by the president in his speech. One of them was that half of the tariff cuts are for goods we don't trade anyway, and a bunch of the rest of them are for goods that we hardly sell. We sell just a little bit of, like snow skis, for example. But another point for the tariff cuts and the market access is that we're not negotiating market access just for U.S. companies. We negotiated market access for Japanese companies and for Australian companies and for Brunei companies. It's market access for all of them. So when we negotiate market access for Caterpillar, we also got access for their competitor Komatsu. So there's no, it's not like a bilateral agreement where it's just U.S. market access. Everybody has it. There's no reason to think ours will be any better than theirs. We don't get disproportionate market access. That's where you get a competitive advantage, is when you get disproportionate market access. So I think those are the big claims that I've got to say, really, on the economic and the sovereignty piece. The TPP Commission and world government, the regulatory coherence, the no jobs creation by proponents admission, the no growth admission by proponents, and then the market access. One final point. The U.S. International Trade Commission is holding a hearing on the TPP this week for the purpose of drafting a report on the economic projections. The U.S. ITC typically does this for all trade agreements. It's usually required by statute. In this case, the fast-track TPA statute requires the U.S. ITC to do a couple things. One is a report on the results of all the past trade agreements, in which it held hearings in November. In this case, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, there will be witnesses, because there's a lot of witnesses. They have to do it for 3 days on the economic projections for the TPP. Their report, I'll be testifying on Friday. Their report is anticipated, pursuant to their own regulatory announcement, to be done on May 18th. So Arthur gave an outline of some of the timing issues. One addition to that is I'd say that report is May 18th. So it may be worthwhile to argue that you can't do anything with TPP until we see what its economic impact is from the fast-track required ITC report, which won't be until then. So that's my thoughts for now.
Thank you very much, Michael. What we're going to do now is I'm going to open it up for questions. Again, if you have a question, not a statement, not a diatribe, a question for either Michael or Arthur, go ahead and press *6. Wendy, I just opened your line.
Thank you very much. I have one question concerning the omnibus spending bill and the H-2B visa extension from 66,000 to 264,000 regarding insourcing and the loss of manufacturing and all kinds of low-skilled working jobs for Americans here in the United States. and how that figures in here. And where can we get the organizational sign-on letters and copies to deliver? If someone could point me in the right direction, I would love to do that as well. Thank you. Check.
Arthur, part of that is yours because Wendy needs the sign-on letter. Arthur? Wendy, in the chat box, there should be information on the sign-on letter. Arthur may have had to drop off. I'm not seeing Arthur on my board. He may be back. Michael, is there any part of Wendy's question that you want to take?
I don't know the specific answer to it. Certainly there is I would take the opportunity to point out there is a chapter in temporary entry for business persons in the TPP that involves, immigration visas, permits, and the like. I haven't gone through that. Also, the TPP Commission can reinterpret that. That's something that the right is concerned about with immigration, but I don't know the answer to Wendy's question.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Michael. Mark, your line is open.
Hello?
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah.
Yep, we hear you fine.
Okay, all right. Well, do you guys have a database of contact information that people can use to show up at local congressional offices, form a local coalition or group of people that can show up together? I mean, I've been to by a number of congressional offices, including my local one, by myself. But it would be good for all of us to form local groups and show up at our local congressional offices and tell them about the negatives of TPP. Do you guys have data on this, local?
Well, we do. We normally can't just give people's contact information to other people without their permission. But what we can do is we can allow people to basically announce when they're going to a congressional office, and now it's going to annoy people. We can then email where you can go to see who has a visit planned to a congressional office. And if there's nobody planning a visit to your member of Congress's office, you can then create an event. And I know PDA, we would at least be willing to recruit people to go with you. That's one of the reasons why we don't just share names and email addresses. We need permission of the people who are on our list to give their contact information to anybody else. But that's a really, really good idea, and that's one of the things we're going to be working on, trying to get multiple people in organizations able to go together. I know Flush the TPP does a number of activities like that. So, yes, Mark, this is something we're looking at because it's much more effective. And Arthur is also going to be doing that. So I'm going to hopefully be talking to Arthur on Monday, and with any luck, you folks will begin seeing what this country needs, more emails. But it'll be about organizing congressional events. Paul, your line's open.
Yes, my question is for Mr. Stumo. I know one of his points was sovereignty, and perhaps just so you can maybe explain a little so that all right. I know, for example, that the Constitution of the United States is considered a living document, and so over time it gets interpreted in different ways, and through acts of Congress and the Supreme Court, et cetera, it gets agreed upon, and we agree with what it means. Now, are you saying that the TPP is also a living document, but instead of our government and our people deciding what it means, only the TPP Commission has a say?
Yes and no. Of course, from the conservative side, you have the sort of the Scalia view, which is not a living document. It means what they meant at the time. But for the TPP, so being a living agreement is like fingernails on a chalkboard for the conservatives. But yes, the TPP Commission can interpret it. Of course, the state-to-state dispute resolution tribunals can interpret it, just like WTO struck down country of origin labeling in a state-to-state dispute resolution, where country of origin labeling was never in the WTO, but they interpreted it to apply and invalidate our domestic law on labeling. So that's number two, the state-to-state dispute resolution. And then, of course, the ISDS tribunal system is another way it can be interpreted in ways that Congress did not foresee. So there are three ways in which it is a living agreement, and the TPP Commission is something new that is not typical in the past trade deals.
Thanks, Michael. Nancy, your line is open.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Stumo, for your very excellent presentation and analysis of the economic and other impacts. I just wanted to check with you because you mentioned the May 18 date that the ITC report would be out, and that in the fast track in fast track that is required. But my understanding is that so I just wanted to clarify, is it required or not? And could President Obama, if he feels he has the vote, go forward without that report?
I think it is required to the extent that ITC needs to produce a report. I am not I'm not asserting, I don't know that Congress has to wait to vote on it until the report is done. I don't know if that, I don't think, but I'm not sure, but I don't think that technically Congress has to wait for the report. I don't know that that's part of the timeline. The president, sends implementing legislation, and then the timeline starts, regardless of the U.S. ITC report, I think. But I think it's an argument that it is prudent to wait until the ITC report before Congress has sufficient information to know whether this is a good deal economically. So it's persuasive but not mandatory. That's the way I think of it now.
Caller at area code 503. Your line's open.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I had a question about tariffs. Sometimes I think I understand them. Sometimes I'm not sure. I assume tariffs relate to the charge of bringing goods into America or goods exporting from America. Could you, Michael or Arthur, explain that?
Yeah, tariffs are a tax on imported goods applied at the border, but not exported goods. So when goods, except to the extent the country that they go to puts a tariff on it as a tax for importing. So tariffs are basically import taxes for imported goods.
All right. This is going to be our last question. Caller at area code 413. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm going to ask a question that I actually know the answer to, but I want to know if the speakers do. Not sure who to ask, so anybody can answer. I think someone said Obama's going to talk about the claim, the U.S. trade representatives claim that there will be an increase in the number of jobs supported by exports. And my question is, are you aware that there is a way that the number of jobs supported by exports can increase even though the number of jobs in the United States does not increase?
The way they have phrased their implication of job growth recently that I've seen is that they say that there are X amount of export-supported jobs in the country. So trade supports these export-supported jobs. They don't explicitly claim the TPP, especially after the Washington Post a year ago gave the administration 4 Pinocchios for talking about job creation. They sort of toned down a bit on that, but they still say export-supported jobs. So if Acme Inc. in Asheville, Ohio sells two or three of its 100,000 product sales overseas, their employees are all export-supported jobs. So if we don't do TPP, the implication is we're going to be harming all those export-supported jobs. They will never address the import displaced jobs. They simply won't respond at all, certainly publicly. And I know that in congressional briefings, when a congressman or woman asks, "Well, what do you have on the the jobs destroyed by imports?" or something like that, they'll say, "Oh, well, I don't have that information right now. Next question." So, secondly, Commerce has used some sort of a calculation in the past that $1 billion in exports creates 5,000 or 10,000 jobs. They never discuss the import displacement side, and EPI has claimed, well, if the exports create that many jobs, then the import displacement destroys that many jobs. So $1 billion in imports, or $1 billion in trade deficit, is $1 billion in imports will destroy 5,000 jobs, and every $1 billion in trade deficit is a net loss of 5,000 jobs. So 300 billion trade deficit times 5,000 is a lot, et cetera. So the short answer is they won't address it. The U.S. ITC, I've gone through some of their past reports. They actually, to their credit, usually don't claim much in job creation. That's, they've got their sort of economist studies and econometrics. They usually don't claim much job creation. So we'll be looking to see what they say coming out on May 18th or some other day, and see if they continue that course where they can't really find much job creation, can use that as well. So that's a longer answer for saying they just discuss the exports. They don't discuss the imports, and that's how they kind of implicitly try to lead you to believe that there's a benefit.
I want to thank you, Michael, for being kind enough to stay with us and answer the questions. Some really amazing questions tonight. Our next
thank
speaker
you, Harriet.
is...
I just want to say you guys do such great work. I mean, it's just fabulous. And thank you, Harriet.
Well, this is Andrea, but Harriet is also on the line. So, yes, we so enjoy
Andrea,
having you.
Sorry.
No problem.
I'm embarrassed now.
No. Our next speaker is Dr. That was Harriet. Our next speaker is Dr. Margaret Flowers, a tremendous friend of this call, having been with us literally from the very beginning. Dr. Margaret Flowers is a medical doctor. She's a pediatrician, and she is co-chair of the Maryland chapter of Physicians for a National Health Program. Margaret is also co-director of Popular Resistance, and It's Our Economy, and she's co-organizer of Flush the TPP. A number of people on this call attended the Fall Rising Days of Action in Washington, D.C. Margaret was the co-organizer of that action. Margaret, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and you've got really important information for folks.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrea, and thank you for everyone who's on the call tonight. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Beautiful. Thanks. So basically what I'm going to run through are some actions that people can take to try to stop the TPP. And the first one is very time sensitive. If you haven't heard, the United States Trade Representative Office on December 28th, of course, that's a time when most people in the U.S. are not paying attention to politics at all, released a public comment period where people could submit comments about the impacts of the TPP on employment. And so far, 1,676 people have done that, which is fantastic. I think they don't usually get very many comments at all, like probably in the 20s or 30s, so this is tremendous. And that public comment period is ending on January 13th, this Wednesday at close of business in D.C. So I think that's around 5:15 p.m. on Wednesday Eastern Time. So you can still submit a comment. We made it easy for you with instructions. So go to bit.ly/tell-the-USTR. If you've already made a comment, you don't need to make another one, but maybe you can spread the word to people that you know and encourage them to make comments as well. Following this comment period is going to be another comment period for the United States International Trade Commission, and so we will get that information out as soon as this comment period closes. The next one will be open for a month. And the comments actually are going to be used for a report that the United States Trade Rep provides to the United States International Trade Commission for their economic impact report, which will go to Congress. Also, all of those comments are going to be made available publicly. I've been told by their office that 10 days after, or a week or so after, is when they will release those. So we'll be looking through them and being able to compile some data from that to be able to say how many people commented, how many people were concerned about it, how many people were for it, those kinds of things. So your comments are important. Let's go to the next slide, if we could. If you go to flushthetpp.org/actions, our actions page, you'll find a number of different actions that you can take. And one of them that's been going on for a little while now is the boycott for TradeJustice. This is really a long-term project which, if more people engage in this over time, can begin to have a significant impact. It's about both resisting the fact that trade agreements drive a race to the bottom in worker protection and environmental protection, and also creating the alternative that we want, which is, commerce that raises that level, that lifts everybody up and makes it possible for people to be healthy and have, living wages. So the boycott encourages people to buy used, buy local, or buy fair trade. And we're still fleshing that out with information, but if you go to flushthetpp.org/boycott, you can find some information there as well as make a commitment to do that. Secondly, as you know, the State of the Union is coming up on January 12th. The President has spoken about the TPP in past State of the Union and has not been completely honest, as we know, with the American people about its impacts on jobs, the economy, et cetera. So we're preparing, since he's actually saying that this is his last State of the Union, so he's planning to spend quite a bit of time on the TPP. He's only going to cover 3 topics reportedly in this State of the Union, so the TPP will be a big part. He's going to give a hard sell, and we're ready to counter that misinformation. So we're doing a kind of media response, which has actually already started. So if you go to flushthetpp.org to the actions page, again, you'll find a link there, or you can just do the short link, which is flushthetpp.org/SOTU. You'll find tweets there and memes that you can start spreading the word about the truth about the TPP and kind of start to warn people that they may not be hearing the truth in the State of the Union. We'll be tweeting as well during the State of the Union, as well as the supporting the TPP Twitter storm that Emilianne Slaydon does. and also retweeting the tweets that Lori Wallach is going to be tweeting live at that time. And so we just hope to really inundate the Twitter sphere with the truth. We also are creating, and we'll have this up soon, kind of a document that goes through the major myths that we expect to hear and corrections to those. And we'll be encouraging people to tweet that out at reporters or share it on Facebook with reporters, or you could email it to them to give reporters the factual information. And we're just kind of saying, hey, everything you hear might not actually be accurate, so maybe you should look into it a little bit more deeply, and here's some information to help you. And then following the State of the Union, we'll be tracking the media that comes out and responding to that as well directly to the reporters and trying to correct that information. So lots to do. The more people that engage in this, the stronger our impact will be. So we really encourage everybody to get active around the State of the Union. So just go to flushthetpp.org/SOTU. And then coming up, we can go to the next slide. You heard some about this, but we have some February actions that we're encouraging people to take. And we know lots of people are also planning January actions during the recess, which is fantastic. February 4th is the day that we expect the president to sign it, no matter what the New Zealand government is currently saying. And so we've gone ahead and started organizing actions. And if you look on our actions map, you'll see that lots of cities have already signed up, and we encourage more cities to do so. The actions can be as simple as going to a highly visible place and holding up signs and handing out flyers, or you can do something bolder. Some places are actually planning marches and might shut some things down as well. So this is the street part of the action that we really need to have to escalate and show that we're not going to tolerate this attack on our democracy and our safety. And then during February 14th to 21, when members of Congress are at home, we also encourage you to make a visit to your member of Congress. You can deliver the letter that Arthur talked about that was signed by more than 1,500 organizations, and we have some a posting about that on Flush the TPP to help you with that if you go to our news page. You can also ask your member of Congress if they have read the TPP, because many members, not many, actually I think so far it's only one. We hope it will be many. One member of Congress was supportive of the TPP and then actually read it and now is opposed. And so we need to push more members of Congress to do the same thing, because if they understand what this is about, which many of them don't, they don't look at the big picture, then hopefully we can push them to be opposed to it. Lastly, I just want to tell you about the calls that we do. Our weekly call is Wednesday night. It's really much more of an organizing call, and you're welcome to join that. We're starting to talk about, in addition to the actions that we have under works right now, we're starting to talk about a spring mobilization and escalation, so we encourage you to get involved in that discussion. And so I'm going to stop there, and if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me through the flushthetpp.org contact page. And, if one reminder, if you are interested in doing an action on February 4th, and you might need some help in kind of planning that, we have some tools and information for you. And Mara Cohen is also helping people with ideas and so forth to help them get started on that. And you can reach her. Oh, shoot, I wrote down her email. Now I'm lost. It's Mara J, J-A-I, so M-A-R-A-J-A-I 51@gmail.com. Again, if you don't get that, just reach out to me through the Flush the TPP page and I'll connect you. But she's willing to work with people who want to do local action. So thanks so much for your time, and I'll look forward to your questions.
All right, Margaret, that is great. If you do have questions for Margaret, go ahead and you can press *6. We've got Adam coming up with the upcoming events, so I'll take any questions for Margaret. *6 to be added to the queue. You were beyond fabulous tonight, Margaret. There are no questions. You were absolutely clear and wonderful. ahead, Diana. We are delighted to have Diana Ramirez of the Public Citizen. You're part of the Global Trade Watch with Lori Wallach, right?
Yes, correct. I'm the new National Campaigns Director at Public Citizens Global Trade Watch. And I was supposed to talk about TPP timeline and SO2 actions, but all our wonderful speakers have already done that for me. So it makes my job easier. It makes our night and our call easier. But just wanted to take this time to introduce myself to everybody. I am, you might have been working with Elisa Simmons before at Global Trade Watch. She had two positions. She was the National Campaigns Director and the Deputy Director. And now that has been, her role is now two separate roles the way it originally was, and the new Deputy Director is Matt Groff, and I am the Campaigns Director. So jot our names down. If you'd like to reach out to us, we can be a resource. Adam and Margaret did a great job of outlining, and Arthur did a great job of outlining everything that I was going to talk about. But I just want to emphasize on three things that Public Citizen has put out that everybody is welcome to get, and I'll give my email out after this. But there are three documents that we are working on that I can email to you. One is we're working on a series of op-eds in our target districts to make the opposition voices heard after the State of the Union. So we kind of know what the president is going to highlight in the State of the Union speech. So Lori drafted an op-ed, and it has a lot of all of the main issues, all of the items that anybody would want to talk about. You pick and choose. It's kind of a menu op-ed. And then we'll work with you to send that out to your member of Congress, or we'll work with activists or other people who would want to send that out. So the more voices we have in the media right after the State of the Union, obviously the better. Lori will be tweeting from her personal account, and the Global Trade Watch Twitter account will be active as well. So we'll be joining the Twitter storm in that sense. And Lori also did a great write-up of a SO2 pre-vote, and that's available to everybody. Michael mentioned that. And we also have an analysis of the TPP text broken down by major sections. So if anybody is interested in any of those documents, here's my email address. It's dramirez, DRAMIREZ, @citizen.org, and I'll be happy to send that out to you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much for joining us, Diana. I am looking forward to meeting you, and I wanted to let everybody know that Lori Wallach will be at the Progressive Roundtable on Wednesday, the 13th, from 1 to 3, and we are going to be live streaming it. If you are in the meeting room, I put in the YouTube link to the live stream. If you're listening on the phone, you can go to www.pdamerica.org, and we actually run the live stream on their website. I'm going to bring Adam up again to talk to us very briefly about the upcoming calls. We're a little bit late. So, Adam, go ahead.
Okay, great. So we have a bunch of calls coming up and a bunch of other critical events. One thing that I did want to mention in terms of one other State of the Union activity that we can participate in, on Tuesday night, for us anyway, infamous Organizing for Action, which is the non-governmental advocacy arm of the Obama administration, which has been aggressively trying to convince grassroots progressives that TPP is the most progressive trade deal in history, is going to be holding viewing parties of TPP around the nation. And so this is where they'll be watching the State of the Union around the nation, where they'll be watching the State of the Union, and people will be presumably being sold on the idea that TPP is a great deal that they should support. These are open public events. You can go to there's a link on the upcoming events list at the link that I supplied earlier, which again, if you go to tradejustice.net/news and click on the link for today, you'll find a link under the 12th that'll tell you how to find those parties so that you can attend one near you and crash the party and let people know the truth about TPP. Many of the people involved at the grassroots level in organizing for action are well-meaning progressives who do not realize that they're being sold a bill of goods and need to get the information that for people supporting progressive values, we need to oppose, not support the TPP. Now, coming up this weekend, actually before this weekend, on January 13th, there's another conference call that's being organized in addition to our normal Sunday calls and Flush the TPP's weekly Wednesday calls. Also on Wednesday at 7 o'clock, the Sierra Club and the Communication Workers of America are having their executive director of the Sierra Club and president of the Communication Workers speaking on a national conference call. You can get the details and register at the events page. One other note, the ITC hearing we heard about Wednesday the 13th through Friday the 15th, that's a public event. You can actually attend that and wear your anti-TPP t-shirt and button or stand outside and flyer. It's very important that we be there and because there may be media there and they may want to talk to people with another perspective on the TPP. Looking ahead to the 24th, the 17th rather, our next national call is going to be a call called Mystery Meat and Dead Dolphins. While we still must resist the TPP, our guest will be Deborah James of the Center for Economic and Policy Research, who will be talking about the recent Nairobi round of WTO meetings, who will be talking about what the WTO is and why we should fight it, and some of the recent outrageous WTO cases that really tell us why we need to oppose TPP, because we cannot put more power in these arbitration tribunals that attack our ability to pass important laws protecting consumer rights and the environment. Moving ahead to the 24th, on our webinar, our guest will be Sharon Anglin-Treat, who's a former Maine state legislator and an expert on these rotten trade deals. She's actually one of the formal advisors and has written a critique of the regulatory cooperation chapter of the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, which is very similar to the regulatory coherence chapter that we heard about earlier from Michael in TPP. And so she's going to talk about how this regulatory cooperation chapter is a pro-corporate attack on our public interest laws. So that's Sunday, January 24th. On Sunday, January 31st, we're going to be having a call talking about the TPP signing on February 4th, and what are the critical action steps that we must take in preparation for the 4th, so that we ensure that the message is that the people of the world oppose TPP, and that even though this agreement has been signed, we will not allow Congress to ratify it. I urge everyone also to take a look at this list of events. There are many events that in the interest of time I won't be able to mention right now. There are activists in New York who are mobilizing around the state of the state in New York, and many, many other events, radio shows, and other opportunities for you to learn more on that list. So please check out that events link. Again, it's tradejustice.net/news, and then you just click the link for this date. I'll also post that in the chat box. So please join us for these upcoming calls. Please take action. Please be prepared to call your local and national talk radio shows the morning after the State of the Union to give the hosts a piece of your mind about why TPP is a rotten deal. This is a critical moment. The TPP propaganda offensive is ramping up from the Obama administration, and we need to lead the counterattack. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Adam. And I want to thank our special guests, Michael Stumo, Arthur Stamoulis, and Diana Ramirez for joining us tonight. As always, we are so delighted with our call planning team, Emilianne, Slaydon, Adam Weissman, Dr. Margaret Flowers, also a very, very special guest and friend of this call. I am going to and
Q&A session is over.
Mode.
Your conference recording has stopped.
And all lines are now open or will be in a moment.
Bye, awesome people.
All right, everybody.
Bye. Good night.
Thanks, Andrea.
Get up.
All right.
Love you.
Everybody. I love you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night. Thank you, Andrea.
Good night, all. Thank you.
Night.
Goodbye.